Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast. Thank you for joining us. I'm sitting down with Erik.
You want me to talk now? Oh, hi.
And Steve.
Hello.
And I'm Tim. And we're doing a podcast on just bad movies and talking about them. I'm not really sure where things are going to go with it, but for now, we're starting things off with a terribly bad movie that Erik and I had actually had the privilege of watching once before, but it sounds like Erik maybe was able to forget some of those, which I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because this movie is terrible.
No, it's a good thing. It's like when an 8-year-old is involved in a horrific car accident where both his parents die, he doesn't remember it. The same sort of effect, I think, happened in my brain after watching that show. I didn't have to relive it all the time, you know?
Right.
But now with years of counseling, we'll bring it all to the surface.
Yeah.
So the movie that we watched was Miami Connection. And Erik, you're actually the one who discovered this movie once upon a time. And
really?
I don't know. It is terrible. Like, it is very, 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 very bad. But it is bad in such a brilliant way that this might be, from my perspective, the best, worst movie of all time. I just can't. I love how terrible it is.
So then you started with the best, worst movie. I mean, where do you go from
where do you go from here, right?
He started with The Haunting of Hill House of bad movies.
That's right. You're going to have to give a little background to that comment, though, I think, Steve.
Well, yeah, so Erik was our local I don't like horror shows guy, and we introduced him to The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, which, in my opinion, is the best horror show ever made.
Oh, it's fantastic.
He hasn't been able to enjoy a horror show since. We watched a few, and he's like, it just doesn't measure up.
Yeah, exactly. All the rest are just less good.
Well, it only goes down from here.
Okay.
So, Steve, you had not seen this movie. Actually,
I actively avoid bad movies, yeah.
Okay.
As somebody who values his time.
Yeah.
Maybe before we talk about our feelings on it, Erik, can you summarize what Miami Connection is?
Yeah, I think that's an unfair question to ask me, because I think that's part of the problem of the movie is that one cannot summarize it very concisely due to a large amount of elements that have no place being there and don't explain anything at all. But I'll do my best. I don't want to tip my hand early. You know, I don't want to come across sounding negative, obviously. Yeah, I loved the film.
It's going to be negative, yeah. Okay.
But yeah, summary. So Miami Connection is a name that someone decided to name the film. Very little has to do with Miami. In fact, most of it takes place in a different city. There is a bad gang of ninjas, as there often is, and these particular bad ninjas were involved in cocaine trade. Then a gentleman from Korea originally started a friendship club / taekwondo group and also musical ensemble called Dragon Sound. They just existed. But this really somehow infringed on the drug-dealing ninjas' territory for a variety of reasons. Some of them romantic in nature, others musical in nature, and others just because I think they occupied the same street at the same time. So a conflict developed, and the actor Erik Tim, who played Mark, was kind of the leader of the musical ensemble of Taekwondo artists and friends, was able to thwart the ninja drug dealers and in an effort to live peacefully with everyone else, murdered most of the ninjas. And a young black American was able to reunite with his father. I think I've covered most of the storylines.
There was a love story in there too, right?
Yeah, I did mention romantic, but
you know,
I didn't get into the detail. That's fair. Steve, if you want to fill in some of the love story there.
No, I think you've just missed so much of this movie. I mean,
there was a great deal of montages.
Well, you just said it was ninjas in Miami, but these were cocaine motorcycle ninjas.
Ninjas.
So the opening credits roll and the music, the first line is "Bikers by day, ninjas by night, steal all your cocaine and also your life."
Is that what the song was singing? The lyrics to the song?
That's the lyrics of the song.
honestly, the first 15 minutes of this movie, I said, is this a musical? What is this? Like,
you do get two songs in the first 10 minutes. You get a lot of bang for your buck.
Well, and that's absolutely true because it was free on YouTube. So, I mean, it's hard not to get
No, we
bang
got
for your buck.
that buck was banged all over the place. Yeah.
Unless you count your time as bucks, because time is money. You will not get that hour and a half
If that's
back.
the case, that is the worst investment I've made in a long time.
Okay, so essentially a band of orphans.
Orphans, yes.
Yeah, you're right.
You
I
forgot
missed
that critical information.
They all live together as well.
These
Because they got really upset when they found out that African American guy had a father.
Actually, Black American, I think.
Black American, yes.
So,
Black American.
these adult orphans who live together, have a band together, practice Taekwondo together. All
For inordinate amount of time, actually. There was a whole 5-minute montage of that.
Yeah, there was. More than one nose pinch.
somehow they somehow offend a gang of biker ninjas.
No, they offended another band
That's right.
guy. And then he went to the biker ninjas.
And tells them
Actually-
whatever money he makes with his band, he'll give to them if they kill this other band.
Were they into Taekwondo or were they into music? It was hard to tell.
Well, they're so good at both.
Their music was a martial art of its own, I
When
think.
It was.
what makes a good musician? They sound great, and they don't even need to have their guitars plugged in to be playing the right notes or the right instruments or singing the same words that is being heard or clapping to the same beat. They just have so much energy that it emulates through and produces incredible music even against all odds.
Well, that's summarizing the whole plot of this movie. That was everything that we saw in this movie. You don't need script.
Yes.
The pure energy of us on screen is going to make this movie happen.
Actually, that's a very good point, the no script thing. I have quite a few notes about that.
So there had to have been some type of script, because for people who haven't seen this movie, as Eric already mentioned, the protagonist in it, T.K. Kim, I think is his name.
Mark, yeah.
He clearly did not know any English, and so he was just repeating back words that were being told to him. And so there had to have been some amount of script for him to have lines to say. But everyone else is ad-libbing all of it.
And repeating each other.
Yeah, they're just echoing off each other's lines. And so one of my favorite scenes is actually between the, I think, music promoter or the gentleman who owns the club and the band who got kicked out by Dragon Sound. Well, they only got kicked out because Dragon Sound was so much better than them. And the conflict that arose between the two groups mostly consisted of them yelling, "You son of a bitch," at each other. It was used at least 5 times in maybe 43 seconds. I haven't seen that accuracy. If one was to hang out outside of a bar in Grand Prairie, that's exactly how a conflict would start. Half-drunk men shouting "you son of a bitch" at each other and then starting to swing.
Steve.
Yes.
Okay, I want to take a step back. There's so much to talk about this, but you did not enjoy your time, Steve? Is that the takeaway?
I enjoyed making notes of how awful it was and the thoughts of talking about this with you guys. The movie itself, no. I would never watch that again.
Me neither. I would never watch it twice.
You would never watch it twice. You'll probably block it out of your memory in 5 years from now.
Every time is the first time for
Miami
Eric.
Connection. So I want to say, it's been a long time since the 80s, but it feels to me it was somebody who had some familiarity with American 80s movies and tropes and said, can we fit all of those things into one movie and introduce this Korean guy to the American world as the new version of Bruce Lee, and failed horribly at almost every aspect of that.
I guess now's a good time for the story of this movie. Essentially, T.K. Kim...
I think it's YK.
Oh, YK Kim. I'm just going to call him Kim. That's easier. He was the head of the Taekwondo martial arts school in North America. So he had essentially brought it from South Korea and was moderately successful. Someone that he had met in South Korea proposed the idea of making a movie together. And so they essentially made this movie as propaganda or a sales pitch to try and spread the word about Taekwondo and get more interest. It did not do well. All of this information is pretty old, and he did it all with his own money. So it's hard to say what exact and accurate numbers are, but we think that he spent about $1 million on this movie, all said and done, and he opened it in 8 theaters, hoping that it would take off and then he could put it in other theaters, but it did not do well. I can't say this definitively. This number has to be wrong, but it's the best we know at this point. The box office take, as far as we can tell, was $107.
That's good.
Yeah, just a massive bomb, and that was it. It was dead, and most of the world never saw this movie. It fell into obscurity and never saw the light of day again until 2009. A guy named Zach Carlson happened across the 35 millimeter print on eBay. He bought it for $50, watched it, and fell in love with it. And so he started showing his friends and doing screenings, and it just then blew up. And it became this time capsule of a movie that no one had even seen when it was made, but was perfectly preserved. It is so weird because you're right, Steve. It's like a parody of what we think 80s movies were. It's not what 80s movies were actually like. Everything is so weird and exaggerated and wild.
In my mind, it went a step further. It's almost like if aliens were watching
Yes.
what 80s movies were like. And they tried to replicate not only 80s movies, but what humans would act like. A very early version of AI. Yeah,
well, that's what I was going to say. I think you're onto something. It was like AI tried to make an 80s movie.
Yeah.
I literally have that in my notes from watching it. You cannot convince me that everyone in this movie is a human. It's really like what an alien's interpretation of human interaction is like.
Even the title, so Miami Connection.
And it takes place in Orlando.
Is this like a riff off Miami Vice? And then you had the guy who was like the main antagonist, was the girl's brother. And he was like a very knockoff version of Chuck Norris with the beard look and all that kind of stuff. And then the main actor, Kim, he's like the Wish version of Bruce Lee. And then you got the guy that looked like Freddie Mercury. It was just so tropey of even how they looked.
Yeah. It's so hard to even pick something to talk about. There's just so much to talk about.
Eric, the one thing that you really pointed out was just the nonsensical cuts.
Yes. Yeah. In my notes, I wrote...
We're in a bar listening to a band. Cut. We're in a computer lab at a college.
80% of the scenes stay way past their welcome, and the other 20% end mid-sentence.
Yeah, sometimes you'll watch a movie and the acting is bad. You don't notice the writing because it's like decent writing and the sound is okay. And I noticed with this, I would say the only thing that somebody took their job seriously was the locations. Because you had the cool 1980s train station. Oh, we're going to have a street fight in the headlights of our cars, or the jungle fight in the bush. Like, those were decent locations for any sort of action movie, and I was okay with all that stuff. But, like, the sound recording was awful. The acting was awful. The scenes, the first time that Dragon Sound was eating in the Korean gentleman's restaurant, they kept showing the guy who served the food to them just smiling and nodding. Probably 20 seconds of that all told. Didn't need to see any of it. And then there's other parts where they just skipped it right over. It was incredible.
I disagree on one count. Whoever wrote the soundtrack for this movie did an amazing job.
That's fair. The corny 80s tunes that developed the plot more than the acting in the scenes does, I'll concede that point to you. I don't think that's what in-movie music should do, but I feel like that person felt bad for whoever was going to watch this and felt like maybe he'll just fill in the scene a little bit and explain what's happening.
That's right. What I love about the music is that it does such a good job of catching you up to speed on what's happening in the movie. You can walk away from the TV for 5 minutes and come back back, and the next song that Dragon Sound sings will tell you everything that's happened in the last 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, you're right. It's like a recap. It's like last season on Lost, but just midway through the movie.
Yeah, in song version.
I mean, I think in most cases, and I think most people would agree with me, the actors in the scenes are supposed to do that.
I don't know, Eric. I think we might be asking for a lot that the actors in a scene are telling you the story. I mean, you can have band scenes, show them how cool they are, and how diverse.
It was kind of ahead of its time in that, right?
One guy's Italian, one guy's Korean, one guy's from
Jewish.
Israel, your black guy, and your Irish guy, and they're all in this
Irish
band
as well.
together.
Yeah,
and one token girl in the group
One
too.
girl.
Right?
a girl who doesn't matter where she's from.
No,
They were planning on touring and bringing their peaceful message of respect all around the world.
promoting peace and goodwill.
Like, they're
Goodwill toward men.
definitely getting arrested after this movie, right? They
Yeah.
murder so many people.
In the first kind of real big throwdown in front of the cars at night, there was some scoffing and completely inaudible or unintelligible insults happening from guys with bats from the other cars. So, I mean, they had threatening demeanors, but YK Kim threw the first punch. Dragon Sound was definitely the aggressors in the conflict there. They started the fight, and then the other guys were just forced to defend themselves.
But Eric, the movie starts showing you how bad these cocaine motorcycle ninjas are.
I didn't make that connection. I guess that was even the same people. Because I thought that was mostly the band members of the band who got kicked out because Dragon Sound was so good.
I might have been. I have no idea. I don't know.
Well, if
man.
those were all band members, that is a massive... Is it a marching band?
Yeah, okay. It must have been more than just a band. I didn't see bearded Chuck Norris brother
No, I didn't see bearded Chuck Norris. So we're calling them these names, but the names that they chose...
Oh, yeah.
So the Korean guy, YK Kim, his name is Mark.
Yeah.
So that's good. But then everybody else, Jack, John, Jeff, Jane, Jim.
Yeah.
I mean, could you make it any harder to follow?
That's why we had to, I think, differentiate.
Tall guy.
One guy was a black American. So you had the love interest, that lanky-looking guy. But then afterwards, you had to kind of pick out features, like the one who looked like the singer.
Look like Freddie Mercury.
And we just had to name them other things because their names are so boring and generic. I was going to bring up, though, Chuck Norris. To me, at one point, he looked a little different. He looked like could have been Jake Gyllenhaal's dad. So I wanted to look that up. Because he had a little bit of a Jake Gyllenhaal look. And that dangling earring just on one side, I thought that was even better than his beard. Like, it was quite impressive.
What was that earring?
It was some kind of a claw or tooth. But what I was going to bring up about his acting in particular, I did write some notes about it because it struck me. He talked so monotone that he removed all emotion from the room. I thought at first he was sucking that emotion out to consume it, some sort of energy vampire. But no, I was wrong because what he did was he was like Dragon Ball Z. He was taking and compacting all that emotion into a ball, and then he would just blow up for one scene. He would just yell things for no reason at all.
You son of a bitch!
Yeah, and I was like, wow, that's really neat. I haven't seen that style before where you just don't have any emotion until the explosion at the end. If we have time, I would like to talk about some of the Taekwondo moves. I alluded to the nose pinch earlier. More than one time did Mark pinch the enemy's nose with his big toe and next toe, which is impressive and very practical. But there was also another move where somebody went to punch somebody else and they were going to make them swallow their fist. I don't know if you guys remember that part.
In slow motion.
And I was really impressed with that Taekwondo move as well because I just thought that's very creative. I've never seen anybody try and punch the inside of somebody's mouth before.
Some of the martial arts are really good, but it's so telegraphed that it pulls you out of it. There's one part where Kim does one of those things where he jumps up in the air and he does the splits and he kicks two people at once. There's some good athleticism and agility going on.
For sure.
But a lot of the times someone will get into position too quickly or too early and they'll wait to get punched or wait to get hit. Or their sword fights and they're just trying to hit swords together, not attack someone with a sword.
Yeah, it was very choreographed, yeah.
I actually didn't realize sword fighting was a part of Taekwondo.
Okay, yeah, a couple things. One of the swords that was used was really cool. That spiky stick thing, I don't even know what that was. Toward the end?
In the Mad Max Tower scene?
Yeah, where they had a whole bunch of spikes sticking out of it. I didn't know what that was. I wanted to look it up.
So they capture this guy, the Freddie Mercury lookalike, throw him in the trunk of the vehicle, and then hang them from some water tower-esque Mad Max-like area, which is just setting up, we want to have a cool place to have a fight.
We don't even know how they found them.
No, they just found them. They knew.
That's where you tie up people. That's the spot.
Yeah, if you capture somebody, you're taking them to this place.
Yeah, it'd be a missed opportunity otherwise.
They fight in the streets as they get stopped by 5 cars of angry band members and their friends. Fight at the restaurant. They go to that guy's restaurant and then beat him up. Fight at the tower. And then, of course, the fight at the end. 3 unarmed guys against a dozen sword-wielding ninjas. Those ninjas are in serious trouble, and everybody knows that. We watch these ninjas training this whole movie. 3 different montages. They all have swords, taking on these 3 unarmed guys who know Taekwondo in some part of Florida that looks like a swamp. And the guy who's going to meet his father takes the sword wound to his back, and then his buddy drags him through the Florida swamp.
Oh, no, he got slashed in the front.
If that sword wound is not going to kill him, disease in this swamp is going to finish him off.
It's like the worst thing they could have done with him.
And then they're fighting off ninjas the whole way. And he takes a wound from a sword and turns into Conan the Barbarian, strips his shirt off, and like the whole thing, just kill all the ninjas, removing heads and everything. Wild.
Let's talk about Jim, the guy who gets stabbed on his way to meeting his dad for the first time. He's there for the emotional highs and lows. He gets all the deep dialogue for the movie.
There was a lot of crying.
What does he say when he gets the letter? He's like, oh my God, it's a letter.
Yeah, he got really excited there.
So for context,
there were 2 incredibly awkward scenes from that movie. That was definitely one. When he gets that letter, he's just crying and everybody's trying to console him. And we have no frame of reference for who this guy is. I didn't even realize they were orphans until he gets this letter.
What does Mark say? What do you mean you have a father? I thought we were all orphans.
Yeah,
that's right.
I'm like, what is happening here? It was not emotional at all watching it. I'm not emotionally invested in any of these guys. And then it goes to tears, which when you're not emotionally invested, it actually makes it feel like you're this awkward fly on the wall watching something you shouldn't be seeing.
It was brutal. I did have a question, though, around that scene. Why does YK Kim start feeding everyone grapes? Like, no one asked him to. That's not something they would do in North American culture. Is that a South Korean thing where you just, if you're close to people, you just start sticking food in their mouth? Tim, maybe you can answer that. Is that a Korean thing?
I didn't do any grape research. Woulda, coulda, shouldas. I'm filled with regrets.
It really weirded me out.
I'm like, what is happening here? Yeah, and he did. He fed every single one of them.
Just popping grapes in his friends' mouths.
His delivery of his lines was so robotic. And I get it. He doesn't understand the words that are coming out of his own mouth. But the previous band is there like, you son of a bitch, we're going to kill you. And he says, not my fault, got job from promoter. In all of them, it's like, I'm not scared of you, we fight. It's just impossible to believe that he is speaking words that he understands, because there'd be some amount of emotion or annotation, but he's just doing his best to remember what has been told to him 30 seconds
Yeah, how do I
later.
pronounce these foreign-sounding words?
Yeah.
This is only partially the movie's fault, because YouTube is astoundingly bad at generating closed captions, subtitles, but there was quite a few scenes that made me laugh even more because the subtitles
Of what YouTube thought it was saying.
it was just so bad. On the second speech, when Jim is talking, he was delivering his line about South Korea, and what the subtitles caught was, I'm sure if we all just writing letters, zombie division, South Korea. And then half the time YK Kim talks, he doesn't even try. Like, it doesn't even recognize that as English or any other language. It just leaves it blank, except for one time where it said foreign. Literally just said the word foreign.
Well, when Jim gets to meet his dad at the end,
Yeah.
so he opens
I didn't
the
know
letter.
that was his dad. Steve had to fill me in.
Yeah.
The only time we see this guy, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's his dad. No, it can't be his dad. It's probably just the guy in the waiting room.
I said, well, you think this is his dad just because he's the only other black guy? Guess what? It was his dad.
Well, what's hilarious is he shows a picture of his dad early on in the movie.
Yeah.
And they weren't able to get that guy back that they took a picture of.
So it's a different guy.
Different guy. And it's clearly a young guy where they've just made his hair look
Made
gray.
him look old.
So,
Yeah. He had the baby powder in the hair kind of thing.
I guess the original cut of the movie was that Jim dies after being dragged through a swamp by Mark.
Yeah, he died from typhoid.
Typhoid.
Some kind of jungle fever.
So he died in the initial cut. And when they showed it to people, they were like, oh, that's a bit of a downer. It's a pretty dark ending. And so they went back and they reshot
that's
the
the thing they changed, huh?
Yeah.
That's the thing after the initial viewings that they needed to change.
Everything else is great.
So that's why they didn't have all the cast on hand that they needed to for the reshoot. But it really does feel weird when this guy you've never seen before has like the last lines of the movie.
This is the thing. I didn't care about dude's relationship with the girl. I didn't care about dude's relationship with his father. There was nothing they showed me that made me actually care about these characters. But the one thing I did say, and it was probably the most enjoyable part, as weird as it was, that ninja fight at the end, how over-the-top stupid it was, and how Guy just turns into, like, action hero with his shirt off, fighting with a sword.
Yeah, a couple more things. I feel like I have to bring up the biker gang.
We can't not.
My question is, and I think this seems like what they did, is they found an actual literal biker gang, and they're like, hey, can we let a couple of our actors hang out with you guys and then just film you being ridiculous, both in and out of a bar? I didn't see any of those bikers before or after that scene, with the exception of, the boss bad guy and everything that was there.
You're right, Eric. That was a real biker gang, and they just paid them with beer.
Okay,
That's what we said. I said that. I said, guaranteed. They said, we're just going to film with a few of our guys, and we'll buy the whole bar a round of drinks.
That's pretty much what happened. Yeah. Some of the costumes were fantastic. That's another, now this is two things I was wrong on, because I loved some of the outfits that they had.
Jeff's costume was on point every time. That was your Chuck Norris guy. Every scene, he had a new outfit.
Yeah, I was going to bring him up. I loved his full camo outfit with sneakers.
Adidas. Yeah,
with the Adidas sneakers.
Red
and white.
Sneakers,
yeah.
And I think that's when he was wearing the earring too, right?
Well, he had the earring in a few scenes, but that was definitely one of them. Yeah, they had the cool ninja suits, obviously, and they also had traditional Japanese garbs in some scenes for no reason whatsoever, which was also cool. One of the bad guys wore a number 84 jersey, and I thought that his shorts were perhaps painted on. They were so tight that I could see both of his testicles. I was quite impressed with his outfit. That was the guy with the
crop top, right?
Yeah, he had a crop top, yeah.
Well, they had Dragon Sound t-shirts for the band.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And those, I'm sure you're both familiar with the song Happy by Pharrell.
Yep.
If you watch the music video, it's a bunch of different dancers just dancing to the song. And the first dancer that the music video starts with is wearing a Dragon Sound t-shirt.
No way.
Yeah. It's just below the surface of pop culture. I don't think that most people would even be aware of the impact that Miami Connections had, but you can find it in all things. As a matter of fact, one of the Far Cry games had an expansion. It was called Far Cry Blood Dragon.
Oh, that was the one with the 80s cover on it. I remember that one.
So the soundtrack for that video game is the music from this movie.
Really?
Yeah.
That sucks.
Agree to disagree, Eric. Let me remind you that there's lyrics that go, friends for eternity, loyalty, honesty, will stick together through thick or thin. That's about as cool a lyrics as I can come up with.
Well, I don't want to insult you, so I just won't say anything.
Okay.
I want to switch topics a little bit to the product placement thing. Because there was one thing that I noted. Remember that guy's hat? He wore all the different clothes. But then in that scene in the bar with the actual biker gang, he's got a hat that says Colorado Outward Bound School.
Did you look that up?
I looked it up. It is an actual school that teaches outdoor survivalism and backpacking and stuff.
What would Miami Connection? What? No, you can't even try to explain this stuff. Both Pepsi and Coke were represented in the film, which if either one of them noticed, they would have sued.
There was product placement in this movie. They go on campus to UCF. They're in the school. They're in the classrooms. That was a real teacher from the college teaching that computers class, which, by the way, that scene is so weird when he's so excited that they got 4th place. But I'm not gonna.
Yeah, they got 4th place. Yeah.
But then they're all wearing the shirts from the school. They're on campus. Jane and John are going for a walk. And out of the blue, he says, "Hey, do you have any family?" And she says, "Yes, I've got my brother, but I don't really like him. The only thing that I like about him is that he's helped me to be able to afford to go to this great school and stay in these amazing dorms." And it's it feels like it might have been a commercial that they just didn't really stick the landing quite right.
Yeah, that whole thing was set as a commercial for the college. Yeah, awful.
What do you mean awful?
Anyway, it was a bad movie. Real bad.
I like to think that guy's Colorado hat was kind of like Brad's hat when we filmed the Y2K movie back in the day, Eric. I don't know if you remember. Brad had a ball cap that said "Watts Up," like WATTS, and there was a light bulb sticking out of the top.
No, I don't.
Okay. It was in the movie simply because Brad loved that hat. And I feel like probably a lot of these people were just encouraged to bring their own clothes. Yep. And that guy was like, "Man, I love this hat."
Guy probably went to the school.
Yeah. Where do you think he got his camo gear from?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the one thing that I definitely need to point out is we watched this movie, multiple fight scenes. At the end, a dozen ninjas are killed, including the last guy, getting his head chopped off. And at the end of the movie, the last thing, the words on the screen,
yes.
Only through the elimination of violence can we achieve world peace. Mm-hmm. And they definitely did. They eliminated violence. They killed all the ninjas.
Oh, that's true. The best way to stop violence is just to kill all the violent people.
Yep. Only through the elimination of violence can we achieve world peace.
There's almost more of a North Korean perspective than South Korean there.
Oh, man. When that came up,
you LOL'd there.
Let's take it to closing comments. I don't even know what questions we should be asking in this podcast, because Steve has made it clear that he will never watch this movie again, and that I'll have a hard time getting to watch another bad movie.
That's a really good point, because I do have one question that I would love to hear your answer on. Because I watched this and I'm like, I don't get this. Like, this is awful. Why? What is the enjoyment? Because I don't think you're alone in this. You enjoy watching bad movies.
So for me, I've got a bit of an obsessive trait in pop culture knowledge. And so I like a bad movie, but I love to know why a bad movie, if that makes sense. It's like so many movies that exist are terrible, and people pour millions of dollars into making them. And at no point are they like, ugh, instead of investing another million in this, maybe we should take a hard look at what we're making. And I don't think Miami Connection quite falls under that category, because it's clear that Miami Connection's perfection lies in the fact that it was made by people who don't know how to make a movie. They didn't understand how to make a movie. And that's why you're zoomed right in on Jim's face when he's crying and everyone's way in the background. He's too close to the camera. The scenes all end too early or just sit on nothing while people are just staring at nothingness. They did not understand the fundamentals. And it makes for a glorious perfection that I can get into. But the reason why I find bad movies fascinating is because someone will write a script and it will be for the modern Dr. Dolittle movie. And Robert Downey Jr. will sign on to be paid tens of millions of dollars to pull a bagpipe out of a dragon's butt at the end. And no one at any point was like, why are we spending millions of dollars to CG animate a dragon with bagpipes up its butt? It's fascinating to me that this is the world that we live in. I would not spend my money on that.
And obviously people didn't want to spend their money on this Miami Connection if they only made $107.
That's right. So for me, that's what I find fascinating about bad movies. I watch a bad movie and I'm like, okay, that was wild. How? Why? What happened? There's a number of documentaries that have come out over the years where it's just behind the scenes of these bad movies. And those are things that I find absolutely fascinating. That's the thing I'm most interested in, is why bad movies. I've been doing a podcast with my brother and my boys for a couple years now, and we revisit movies from our childhood. And a lot of them are really bad. And I start to question why I'm watching them, how I got to be doing this with my adult life, what wrong choices I made to lead me here. But that was not my experience with Miami Connection. I watched it by myself, which is normally not a good way to watch a bad movie. You can't make fun of it with anyone, and you're just putting yourself through that experience for no good reason. But in this movie, I literally burst out laughing. I don't even know how many times. The acting is so stilted. The fight scenes are so choreographed and ridiculous. And it just is shocking to me that this movie exists and is so perfectly bad. I don't know of a worse movie than this, and that makes it so amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You're like, I firmly disagree. So my question was going to be, and I kind of answered it for myself there, but would you guys say that this movie is bad good or bad bad? On a scale of bad movies, where does this one fall for you guys?
A good bad movie is one where I don't feel like I want it to be over and I am just looking at the time and whatever. I would say the first time I watched this movie, it was so bad that I was entertained by it and I was waiting to see what would come up next and waiting to rip it apart because I just knew they were going to just ruin some sort of normal cultural thing and totally make a mockery of everything 80s cinema. Not on purpose, but just because they're so bad at what they do. The first time I watched it, it was a good bad movie. It was fun with a bunch of us guys there just making fun of it, but it was frustrating to try and make sense of it for a podcast. Some of the notes that I was sitting down were funny because it was just like, this makes no sense. One thing that we never discussed, but all the ninjas came after the good guys on motorcycles, and they all traveled quite a distance on motorcycles. Yeah. But then in the end, the bad ninja just walked there, like in zero time. I wouldn't have thought of that without kind of taking notes and dissecting it a little bit. But at the same time, I feel like, man, I don't want to spend any more time with this creation. So it was a bad movie the second time I watched it, if that makes sense.
It's funny you were just talking about the bad guy boss. Eric, you were on our Bully Nostalgia podcast last year and we covered Double Dragon. And in it, inexplicably, the two protagonists are brothers who are completely different ethnicity.
Right.
In this movie, Jeff is probably the most central bad guy, but then there's also the head of this ninja clan who's Asian.
Yep.
When they kill Jeff, when he falls off of a building, they report to the head of the ninja clan. They're like, they killed your brother. They killed Jeff. And he's like, not my brother. And it's like, When did they establish that they were family?
But there's so much of that in this movie. That's the thing.
Family can be formed out of nothing.
That's right.
It's like,
family can be a
it's
group
like-
of orphans, even if one of them has a dad.
Starting to sound like Star Wars Acolyte now.
Oh, here we go. Hot take.
No, I'm not going to get into it. No, I watched a review today and it was funny.
Have you watched?
Anyways, I watched the first half episode.
Yeah, I watched it yesterday.
So this leads into my answer to this question. This is actually a very good segue for me. I have zero interest to watch bad movies. And I did this mainly because I was looking forward to the conversation that would happen out of these bad movies. But hearing your take on it, Tim, and kind of dissecting the background with the movie and stuff puts it in perspective for me of why it's so bad. For me, I just watch it and it's like, this is bad, I can't watch this. And I'll just turn it off. If this was a movie I came across, 5 minutes in, I'm done. I'm not watching this. But being able to pick it apart as to why it's so bad is interesting. For me, I like the idea of modern bad. We talk about movies that are failing. Disney's got a lot of heat now, stuff they're putting out. I've got superhero fatigue, Star Wars fatigue, in that I just don't want to watch anything else that they're putting out. But why? Because people get really angry over how bad some of this is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I find that's interesting. But it's different, right? So like this movie, Miami Connection, is just objectively bad. Whereas the new stuff is subjectively bad in that the reasons people are not liking it are varied and all over the place. A movie like this one, you can point out exactly objectively why these were such terrible choices.
Yeah, and that's a good point, actually, is I don't know if we talk about Star Wars, and even to a lesser extent currently with superhero movies, whether or not people have credible complaints about certain shows or movies. So many people hated Last Jedi. I actually liked that Star Wars movie. Like you said, all of it's subjective, but the one thing that's hard to deny is that with each edition that is subjectively bad, they're watering down that brand. And so they're creating a situation where, like it or hate it, with something like Acolyte, every time that they create something that people are upset with, they water down the excitement for the next release and the next movie or the next TV show. And we're never going to have Star Wars Force Awakens or an Avengers Endgame again. Those are moments in time when those brands were worth so much because the quality control had been in place, or they had starved fans, in the case of Star Wars, for content for so long that people were very excited to just have anything. Now it's a dime a dozen.
So what you're saying is Disney have become the cocaine motorcycle ninjas.
Well, that is a great way to wrap that up. I think that's exactly what he's saying, whether he knew it or not.
Yeah, well, friends for eternity, loyalty, something or other. Steve will stick together through thick or thin.
Fighting ninjas. Yep.
How bad of an experience was this for you, Steve? Will we be able to talk you into doing a second episode, or this is hard stop?
Something you said resonated with me. If I had to watch that by myself, there's no way I wouldn't be able to endure it.
That's
Being able
one
to
thing I
watch
said
with
to
Erik,
Steve.
yeah, that made it palatable.
What I wanted, and not that Steve wasn't enough, but I think you have 3 or 4 guys there like we used to in our movie club, Tim.
Yeah.
And you get enough guys thinking different ways that they're making fun of things that you never even thought of. I appreciate what you said, Tim, that with this one, but you did note that that was a difference for you. That this one, watching it by yourself, you got a lot of laughs out of it. But I think for the most part...
No, I certainly would have appreciated watching it with someone. Don't get me wrong. I'm not implying that the best experience of this is by yourself. By no means is that the case. I just find it so fascinating that someone would pretend that these are humans. This is not just a bunch of aliens replicating human interaction for 90 minutes.
I don't
Yeah.
know, man. At the end, that solidified to me he wasn't human anymore.
Yeah.
Steve and I we got to meet for coffee this morning, and we both just looked at each other and went, "Bah," for a while. So we kind of created a memory there. But yeah, I think watching with a group of people is what's enjoyable about it. But I don't do the research. What I like, Tim, is that you go and dig into a bunch of this stuff and find out here's who YK Kim was and here's what they did and these were real bikers. And I find that stuff interesting and I'll remember that and tell other people, but I'm not really a researcher in that regard.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anything anybody wants to say before we close it off?
Only through the elimination of violence can we achieve world peace.
That's right. Kill the violence.
Only through the elimination of violent individuals.